Good afternoon, Mr. Ayotte. My name is Rob Kittredge, and I represent the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, and we have 5 exciting minutes here together today. So I'm going to plow through a number of questions. Parking tickets serve as a deterrent to illegal parking, don't they?
They do.
When people know that parking illegally will get them a ticket and a fine, that deters at least some people from parking illegally, doesn't it?
Yes, of course.
I'd like to understand a little more about how often Ottawa parking enforcement people can ticket an illegally parked vehicle in the ordinary course of business. So let's say, just to pick a totally random hypothetical example, that I parked my car this morning in the middle of Wellington Street, obstructing traffic, and I left it there for 2.5 weeks. Assuming that for some incomprehensible reason my car didn't get towed, how many parking tickets could I possibly find on my windshield at the end of that period of time?
That's a very good question, and I don't have that answer for you. I don't know the minutiae of the regulations. My background is the fire chief, and now
Right.
I'm managing all of this, but I don't have that knowledge.
Could a parking ticket be issued daily to an illegally parked vehicle?
I would have to get that information for you.
Would you assume that probably a parking ticket could be issued daily?
I believe it could, because the parking infractions, the signs would say you can't park between a certain time period, and then once that time period lapsed, the next day the time period would start up again. But
So it'd be reasonable to say that at least 1 ticket per day could be.
that would be reasonable,
Yeah, okay.
yes.
Leaving aside the instruction from OPS to stop bylaw enforcement without police instructions and accompaniment, it's true that illegally parked vehicles weren't ticketed anywhere near that frequently during the process, were they?
I believe I understood the question, but I'm going to kindly ask you to repeat it.
Tickets
And
weren't.
can I just ask you to go a little slower? I'll even give you an extra minute or two.
Deal. All right, I'm trying to plow through
No,
slightly
I
more
know,
than
but
5
it's-
minutes worth of questions. So
But it's
I
with the
get it.
interpreters.
the time is tight. So tickets weren't issued daily to illegally parked trucks during the protests, were they?
That's correct.
If the city had ticketed illegally parked vehicles much more aggressively, don't you think that mounting fines might have persuaded some drivers to move their vehicles?
I do not.
You don't think any drivers would have moved if more tickets were issued?
I do not believe that the protesters were feared getting tickets or fines.
And not a single driver would have moved in the face of mounting ticketing?
I can't say that 100%, but certainly, in my opinion, very few would have left.
All right. You said on the 29th you were instructed by OPS not to ticket in the red zone without their okay and accompaniment. On the 28th, approximately how many bylaw or parking enforcement officers were working in the downtown area?
Yeah, I believe that information is in the disclosed material. I don't have that, but it was in the 10, 15 officers generally work an area, and we would have had that many out that day.
All right. So if those officers were out, they might have needed 10 or 15 police officers accompanying them to do their work in the red zone.
Yes, but on the 28th, that wasn't necessary. Like, it would have been
Sure.
normal practice.
Sure, but going forward, if
Yes.
they needed police accompaniment, that might have meant 15 officers.
It might have. I can't speak to the police operation. They may feel that because of the threat that they would require more than one officer and one bylaw officer to attend those situations.
Sure. I understand that in 2019, the City of Ottawa issued about 350,000 parking tickets. Does that sound about right to you?
That sounds right.
And 250,000 in 2020 due to COVID, I guess, which breaks down to about 20,000 parking tickets per month, or about 10,000 parking tickets every 2 weeks, doesn't it?
You did the math. I'll agree with your math. How's that?
Close-ish, underestimated. But we've heard that only 1,700 parking tickets or so were issued in downtown during that period of time, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
No, sorry, over 3,000 were issued.
Over 3,000. Still,
Yes.
that's quite a bit less than the normal
Yes.
10,000 or so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ottawa bylaw and parking enforcement officers are trained in dispute resolution and conflict de-escalation, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
And they receive that training because in the ordinary course of business, it's not unusual for ticket recipients to behave in a less than civil manner, isn't it?
Correct.
Right. And on any given day, protest or no protest, it's not unheard of for ticket recipients to get aggressive with enforcement officers, is it?
True.
But no bylaw or parking enforcement officers were attacked or injured by Freedom Movement protesters, were they?
As I indicated earlier, not that I'm aware of,
Right.
except for the swarming.
And when talking to Commission Counsel earlier, you discussed the difficulties that the city had obtaining towing services from its standing offer towing contractors and others, and the efforts made to procure towing services. Did the city consider offering increased compensation to towing services to encourage them to provide?
Not that I'm aware of.
All right. Did the city consider buying or leasing heavy tow trucks?
We were looking at all options. You still need to train the drivers, and this was still being viewed as a specific time frame, right? By the time we bought a tow truck and we trained an appropriate driver, that would be one truck, and we needed a lot more than one to execute the final plan.
Right. The city never used its two OC Transpo heavy towing rigs during that period of time, did they?
It did not. Initially, they considered it, but they needed it for their daily operations. The bus system was still running, and the buses were still breaking down and required towing. So, and there were also from the union concerns about safety issues.
All right. You mentioned that heavy towing operators were concerned about driver safety, and that was a big reason why services could not be procured. Light towing operators apparently didn't share those concerns, though, since the city's light towing providers continued to tow vehicles in emergency lanes, didn't they?
Correct.
And there were no incidents of assaults, violence, or injuries to towing operators during the protests, were there?
Not that I'm aware of.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I've gone about a minute and 20 seconds over, but those are my questions.
Okay.